this is what we really need to focus on. We need to focus on the fact that it is going to enhance our efficiency, which in turn gives us more time to do what we need to do in the classroom or what we need to do in the senior leadership space.
The Better Mindset Podcast.
Welcome to the Better Mindset Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Bex.
And on today's episode, a little bit something different. For episode 14, we've got some Making Waves segments, and we're going to break it up into lots of different topics because we've had a little bit of a break, haven't we, Bex, in the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, we have been busy little beavers behind the scenes. We hosted our first Future Now Summit. We did talk about this in previous episodes, and it all came together, and gosh, it was just such an epic experience. I think the highlight for me was getting the feedback from one of the delegates said to us that it was the best conference they had been to in the 20 years that they'd been in education, and we were just blown away because it was our first attempt. We kind of just pulled together all ideas that we really felt were missing in education conferences, and it felt like it landed really well. It was really neat meeting people across New Zealand in education who are just mover and shakers and are there and here for it, and we're really excited about the whole event. It was awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really good. It was a whole theme around disruption and then how you respond to that. So I think it's pretty timely for what we're going to be talking about today in Making Waves, when we're going to be discussing and unpacking what AI is doing at the moment in education and in society in general. So there's going to be some good topics, and we've got some little things to do with well-being, and we're going to talk about Apple and Watch, and then we're also going to be talking about the changes with Flip as well. So stay tuned for that. And if you get all the way through to the end and there are any links from today's episode, we're going to have lots of show notes there for you to be able to go in. So let's get into it. Well, Bex, on Making Wave today, what I thought we might do is probably what we often do, is just mix things up and make things quite different. So what we have done is focused on one topic for Making Waves, but what I thought we might do today is go through actually 3 different topics. Things that are front of mind, things that are trends, things that are happening. Some of them are quite deep, like we're going to be talking about AI in a second, is one of the first ones that's going to be quite philosophical and get into some of the meaty issues that schools are grappling with. But then there's a couple of things that are just nice little updates and tool things, but tool-based things to think about. So the first one that I wanted to talk about for Making Waves was AI, and I've just sort of termed it in terms of pros and cons, because I think in the leadership space, or whether you're a teacher in a classroom, you're leading your students, there are so many things that are happening in the AI space that are really good, but there are also some concerns, and we'll talk about those as well from a societal level, but then the concerns in the education space. So a good chance to start with that as the first topic. What I thought we might do to start off with is have a quick chat about some of the ways that we're seeing AI making an impact in education for teachers on the ground in the classrooms with students. What would be some of the things that you're seeing maybe in your practice, ways that it's benefiting the students that you hear about in the schools that you're talking to?
Cool. So yeah, absolutely. This is front of mind for a lot of educators and senior leadership teams because they're wondering how this is going to impact the way curriculum can be delivered. But this one takes the cake for me. So last week I was actually in Sydney in a school facilitating some PD, and I mentioned using AI in their classroom, and some of them sort of shied away and sort of hid their heads under the desk. But this one educator, who is one of those like shining star teachers you can see in a school, they'd just come off holidays, and she had to take home a class set, 35 written language assessments. They were all on Google Docs, so all online, but they were written language assessments. And if you remember back to that, Mark, that would just take you forever. So because you want to do due diligence to the kids, but you've got to mark where they're at, and it's you have to add a lot of bit of opinion to it as well. So there's that whole opinion base to it, but then also there's the key next steps that you need to come up with, and it's quite time consuming. This teacher had decided to give ChatGPT was the way she did it. She copied and pasted the work that the kids had done into the AI, and also stipulated things like read this doc, talk about how many compound sentences it's got, does it have alliteration, like really specific key outcomes that were related, and then give feedback with relation to the Australian curriculum in English. So she had had done some really key prompts. So that's the key to this, is that you've got to be
So
really...
you have to teach it, don't you? You have to literally
You have to teach it. So she stipulated all those things, and out popped a paragraph for each kid of where they're at in relation to the curriculum, what are their key next learning steps, and she thought that it had given the best feedback she's given in her 20-year career in a fraction of the time. And so she felt actually really excited for the kids, because it had really pulled out those key next learning steps that you really want to give, that you give perhaps to the first 5 or 6 that you mark, because you go in with great intentions, and it becomes that real mundane, repetitive task of reading and then giving feedback. And she was just buzzing, because instead of it taking her whole entire holidays, it had still taken half a day, but had really given and generated some incredible feedback for her term 2 goals for the kids. So that's probably what's taken the cake for me in terms of curriculum based AI enhancements.
Yeah, that's great. And that's real, authentic, genuine, curriculum aligned, criteria based, feedback that the teacher's done. It's like, I think a lot of people are hearing stories, and I'm using this for this sort of approach as well. Write me an email to this person about this topic, and then you adapt it and change it. I wrote a bio for a conference that I'm speaking at, and so I needed to update that, and it dragged all the information off the internet and constructed it, and I did a couple of prompts and got it to change a few things. But I actually did that in the car on my phone and I wasn't driving, by the way. Somebody else was driving. But it's because I needed it, the conference centre needed it early, in the moment. So that was about a 5 or 6 minute job that I did in the car on my phone. And another example that would be a presentation abstract that I had to get in. The submission date was on Sunday, and so I had about an hour to get these done, in the afternoon. And what probably would have taken me 2 or 3 hours took me about 1 or 2. Well, no, actually about half an hour if I actually narrow it down. It took me about half an hour to get that abstract done. But you had to put the right prompts in, and you have to do the right things.
That's right. And this is what we really need to focus on. We need to focus on the fact that it is going to enhance our efficiency, which in turn gives us more time to do what we need to do in the classroom, or what we need to do in the senior leadership space. Another example I saw was over the holidays, because the holidays the teachers are all flustering around trying to find what they're teaching for term 2, and I kind of keep my eye across a lot of the Facebook pages just so I can help where I can, or see where I can help out in terms of like my knowledge or expertise. And there was a teacher who was in charge of a bunch of teacher aides at their school, and they wanted to implement a PMP program. Now, a PMP program is a perceptual motor skills program, so it helps the kids that maybe need a little bit more help with hand-eye coordination, or just tactile skills, things like that. And the PMP program itself is quite expensive, so they didn't have the funds to be able to get the PMP program. So I thought, I wonder if ChatGPT could help out with this. So I jumped on really quickly and I said, hey mate, ChatGPT, because he's my mate now. Can you please put together? I always use my manners as well when I'm using. I was talking about this to the lady as well. I don't know why.
Results. Always get better results,
totally, yeah. And so I said, can you put together 10 sessions of 20 minutes that incorporate perceptual motor skills, fine motor skills, that have a focus on hand-eye coordination or manipulation of materials, and put it in and relate it to the New Zealand curriculum. Literally in 30 seconds, it had spit out 10 sessions that were really easy for a teacher aide to pick up and utilize in the school, and even down to the prompts, things that they needed, the prep that would be like they had to make Play-Doh or things like that. That was all involved in it too. And I was just, wow. And so I popped that in the chat, and I think that it probably had the most likes after all the comment, like people were just like, what? Like, how cool is that? So just again, that time efficiency, it took me 30 seconds just putting the right prompts in, and out it spat.
And it literally, it does the hard lifting for you, but you need to know, the content, you need to know the criteria, the structure, the prompts, and how to use it. So there's a little bit of a learning curve to help teachers get across that learning curve and to use it effectively. It's kind of, but the key idea with the benefits of ChatGPT in particular, and obviously there's Bard in the Google ecosystem, and then you've got Copilot that's being launched in the Microsoft environment. The key thing with it is that it does the heavy lifting for you, but you still need to have the skill set behind what you need. So it's it's kind of like get your bell ready, because here's a metaphor. It's like if I was going to plow a field. So now I don't have to sort of push my plow and do all the hard work, but I can just, now I've got a tractor, but I still need to know the GPS coordinates. I still need to be there if anything goes wrong and make sure that everything goes right. So yeah, good. There we go. I was waiting for that, and I even prompted it. Next time you can surprise me. So those are some of the benefits, and a lot of teachers are hearing about ChatGPT. But just a side note, I'm still talking to leaders who have no idea the potential of that tool. So I was talking to one this week, and I said, like I gave those examples of writing emails, and they were like, "Oh, I never even thought of using it for that." Like if you are listening to this and you are doing that, make sure that you share that with people, because people don't just assume that people are listening to podcasts and reading things online and going to conferences and involved in workshops, because a lot of your colleagues at your school probably don't understand or know that that's there. But there are some other positives as well. So not just in the text generation space. So in the visual, the audio visual, the video making, there are a couple of tools that I know that are being quite effective and people are using. There's one that I know in Canva, so we'll put a link to all of these things that we referenced today in the show notes. But Canva, their Docs to Decks approach, where you can upload a Canva document with bullet pointed lists or even numbering of the headings, and click with a couple of buttons that the help sheet on the Canva support page that we'll link to, show you how to go through the steps. With a couple of links, it'll create a presentation for you. So for you to do that, or for your students to do that, and to get an example of what effective design looks like, and then you go back in and edit, that's a really good little use of AI that is available to you. So if you've got the premium version of Canva, that's a great way to get in and use it. One that I found out literally about last night, which I'm going to use for this podcast recording, what I'm going to do is export the video file of this podcast segment, put it into an application called Opus.pro. So it's called Opus Clip. It's an online app that uses AI, and what it will do is it will go through your video, your YouTube video. I think you need to upload it to YouTube at the moment. And then it will find segments, cut it out in a real aspect ratio if you're going to put it on YouTube or Shorts or Instagram and all those different video clip tools. And then it will caption it as well. So it'll find the best bit, caption it, and it does it within seconds. So you can upload that. So that's quite a useful application for things that people are spending a little bit of time learning how to do manually. We're moving into that world now where you can do that automatically, and using the AI engines to be able to do that. One other little, I guess, pros and a resource that we'd quite like to share with you is a recent article that the UNESCO group have just released called ChatGPT and Artificial Intelligence in Higher Ed. And that's a PDF that we'll link for you. And there are a lot of really cool snapshots of examples of how ChatGPT works, what AI is, but then some examples of how you can implement it in your school and university. So if you want to get a link to that, have a look at it. There are people coming out, or groups that are coming out with policies and procedures and advice on how to deal with this ever-increasing and changing landscape of AI in society, but not only in society, but also in education. Now, this is where we segue into what I've titled the threats of AI. And there are some concerns out there, because I don't know if people listening are aware. There are people involved at the very sort of nitty-gritty end, or the deep end of AI generation tools. So people who are running companies, who are deep in the programming, who are starting to voice concerns about where the trajectory of AI is headed for humanity. And it's almost got an existential threat sort of wraparound to it. So there are concerns coming out, at the school level about assessments, for example. So one of the common things that we hear is that people will be in an assessment process, and they'll be wondering, is this really generated by the student, or is this an AI generated response? And there's an article there from in the New Zealand Herald about some allegations that have been levelled at a couple of students. I don't know if you saw that this morning, Bex, but
I heard it on the news. Yes.
Yeah, Cambridge and Pukekohe High in New Zealand here. There are a couple of students who have had, whether I didn't read right down into the depths of the article, but they've had an assessment that's been submitted and it's been flagged for AI detection. So whether they ran it through an AI tool or not, I'm not too sure. Now they're protesting about that, because they're saying that they did that legally, and it was their own work. But I know that there are issues with some of those AI tools, the detector ones, because I've had something that I've created on ChatGPT, run it through one of the tools, and it said, this is 90% AI generated, and then I've just gone, I wonder what would happen if I just do the same text and do it again, and it said, no, this is completely fine. So that's the same text 30 seconds apart. What the concern with that is, can you trust it? But then there's this sort of whole arms race approach that's happening. So AI is getting better at emulating what a human voice would sound like in a written form. And then the detector tools are trying to keep up with that. So they're learning and the detection tools are learning. It's sort of like an arms race battle that's going on. So that is a concern, something to be thinking about, something to be across. If you have a role in your school that you've been tasked with keeping across the development of AI and what that looks like, just a quick Google search, jumping into Twitter, searching for AI in education. There's a lot of things that are coming up. You can start your own lists and groups and just keeping across that. And we'll be talking about this on this podcast and getting some people in the coming weeks too who have got a lot more insight and expertise than us on that, right? But here's the existential threat. And we've got a couple of links here to send you. But I wanted to start this little discussion on the potential, downside to AI for humanity in general with Steve Wozniak's quote. Now, I heard him on a recent interview. Steve Wozniak, if you haven't heard of him before, he was one of the co-founders of Apple. He was involved with the Apple I and the Apple II that launched Apple into the stratosphere, really, in the computing space. And he's not so much involved in developing tech anymore, but he's much more a commentator and keeping across some of the things that are out there. So he's got this quote that I found quite interesting. He talks about the digital world in general, and he said that the people who designed the digital world should be executed, which I thought was pretty harsh. But then he kind of clarified that and said, or worse, maybe not executed, maybe they should just be forced to live in it. So what he's doing is he's making a little bit of a side comment on the fact that the digital world has some pros and cons, but there are some real challenges and some real downsides to it. Because in his view, and I think a lot of people feel like this, if you look at the benefits to digital life and the digital world that we're in, would you say that people are more happy? Well, probably not on the whole. Would you say that people have more time? Well, actually, probably not on the whole. Would you say that life is getting simpler and easier? Well, probably not on the whole. So there are some questions that people are making about or asking about the generation of these AI tools in society in general. So what does that mean for the AI space in general? Where are we going with that? Well, what I'll do is, rather than me trying to sound like an expert, all I want to do is just point you to a couple of things. Number one, if you saw The Social Dilemma, the Netflix documentary that was put out by Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin, they were involved in a group that looked at the impact of social media on societal trends and mental health and well-being. And so that is a fantastic thing to share with your students if you've got higher ed students, college students, and they want to see the impact of social media on that. But what they've just recently released is a presentation that they've got on their website, and we'll put it in the show notes for you so that you can click on it. And it's called AI Dilemma. You can YouTube it if you want. They have been looking at the impact of the AI generated tools and the impact on society in much the same way that they've looked at the impact of social media apps on society. And that their big message, if you were going to think about what the message is that they're presenting, what they're saying is that just like social media, there is lots of positive messages and promise, to be able to connect people and to be able to bring people together in a global sense and to be able to share information more easily, for people to be able to, make those connections across geographical boundaries. But that, just like social media, the AI has some positives about it. So we've talked about them, being able to halve your workload, being able to be more productive, being able to generate lots of different things that are really promising in the creative space even. But what they're saying is, just like social media, AI has some downsides as well. And it's the unintended consequences that they're concerned about, and a lot of people in this space are really concerned about as well. And I'll give you one example of this that you can go and investigate. So there are situations occurring around the world now where people are generating AI voices based off a very short clip of your voice. So people will be able to listen or capture a 30-second rendition of this podcast of my voice, for example, and then through the AI engine that they've got, they're able to generate my voice to sound exactly like mine with my inflections, my tone, the way that I talk, the words that I use. And then they can use that to trick somebody on the other end of a phone call or a video to actually sound like they're talking to the real me. And so there's a CNN article. It's actually across lots of different website platforms where they're talking about an example that has happened just recently in Phoenix in the US, where a mum has been fooled into thinking that her daughter has been kidnapped and is being held ransom. And it's as real as making that mum think that this is really a person who's captured my daughter, and I need to do something about it in that space. So, absolutely terrifying.
I can see that is terrifying. I'm also sitting here because I'm forever the optimist, right? Yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking I have got so many meetings coming up, and if I could have someone that had my voice and could go on a meeting for me, that would be amazing. Like just clone me right now and just use me as another person. That would be great. But that is terrifying. And the thing is how are we going to combat this? And this is, all these negatives or whatever that come out of these articles. It's all very well and good going through and pulling out all the negatives, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be there. So what are we going to do to combat this? Or what are we going to do to support strategies around enabling kids to do something better with the AI in their school rather than just copying and pasting an essay? So I think, I'm forever the person that goes, okay, yep, those are negatives, but what are we going to do about it? Like, what's the next steps? So I'll be interested to read through those as well and try and sort of ideate some ways that we could support people out there to combat those.
Yeah, I think the big idea with this whole discussion is, number one, we just want people to be aware that it's not all roses, it's not all wows and, incredible tools. There are some concerns about this. And I think from a development and a leader in the tech space area, that a lot of those people are looking at this and thinking that we do need to slow down, so there's been a whole group of people who are signing a petition to world governments to say that we need to slow this down and we need to regulate this. So Microsoft,
I saw the guy
Apple,
from Google as well.
Yeah, everybody's saying, Elon Musk, a lot of people are saying that we need to actually slow down and take a good look at this, because we don't know where it's going, especially if you want to look into the combination of the AI software that we've got with quantum computing. And I saw an article or an interview with that on that this morning, where someone, was one of the experts was saying that when you've got quantum computing, which is the top level hardware or computer program that can, the processor, then combined the hardware with the software, then he said you've got like almost unlimited potential to be able to roll through. So what does that look like? Where is it going? As educators in schools, as school leaders who are in the digital space, for us to be aware of that, and then maybe pointing people particularly to the AI dilemma. I think that presentation on YouTube will link for you. That is a really well balanced approach. There's a couple of interesting, funny parts in it too, Bex, where they say, right, that sounds very scary for everybody. Let's all stand here and take a breath. And I'm not joking. They're on stage and they go, and they're getting everybody to kind of ease their anxiety, because it's sort of like that trigger warning in the middle of my presentation. So I might do that for some of my
yeah, that's a great idea.
Talking about it.
Bring them back
to
their
very well balanced. Yeah, they definitely talk about the positives, but they're also making people aware of some of the concerns down the track, and even some of the concerns right now. So something to be aware of, something to think about, keep across, and definitely dive into some of the links that we've got. This is an ever-evolving story, so it's just going to keep evolving and keep rolling out. And I'm sure that by the time this podcast airs in a couple of days, there'll be some new additions to the narrative from that point. So something to keep a track on, and we'll keep everybody posted with some of the updates and people that we can get on the podcast. So here's the next one. Yeah. Really? But actually both of us were on a call recently with Apple. So we're Apple professional learning providers. We're one of the groups in Australasia now who are, partnering with Apple on some of the training that we're doing and running Apple Learning Institutes. And we're having a talk about some of the trends and some of the things that the good guys at Apple would like us to be able to focus on. And one of the phrases came up that made me think about well-being, because I know that that's a big trend. But one of the phrases that came up was watch and phone. Now, last year we were talking in the Apple educator space about Mac and iPad and how they work really well together. You know, the phrase there is better together, Mac and iPad, how they have different ways of working. But I wanted to just talk about watch and phone and what it looks like in the well-being space, because I know that both of us have got iPhones, like a lot of teachers, or if you've got a smartphone, you know that it will go with a smartwatch. And I know that you've got your watch on at the moment. I've got a Garmin watch on at the moment, which I'll put up on the screen, but I'm just in the process of selling that and then going back to Apple.
Coming back to the good side.
Yeah, I know. I have a long conversation about, the reasons why I decided to. Partly, sometimes I just get bored, Bex, to be quite honest.
I know. Yes, you are.
But one of the things that I really enjoy about the Apple Watch experience is the fact that it's a smartwatch first. And I guess to wrap this whole shift that I'm making, Garmin has some watches that are really good for hiking and for running and for health metrics, if you're in the training side of things, but they can also do some smart functions, whereas Apple's kind of the other way around. It's the smart functions. So there's a lot of the mapping tools, a lot of the notifications, a lot of the interaction with your apps on your phone that I miss not having on my Garmin. So that's the long story short.
Okay.
Yeah, but what I wanted to talk about some of the well-being advantages of having a smartwatch in general. So you don't have to have an Apple Watch. You could have a Garmin. You could have Samsung have got a great ecosystem that you can get a smartwatch in. Can I start by asking you, what would be some of the things that you use in the well-being space that you activate through your phone? How does your phone and your watch particularly help you look after your well-being as a leader, as an educator?
Well, I guess the one that's first and foremost that I use every day without fail would be the fitness and the health app. So I am a bit of a gym bunny, a bit of a runner, a bit of a fitness. That is my well-being. If I exercise, I feel like my brain functions better. I feel like I'm a better mum. I'm a better person, a better a leader. So every morning I do track what exercise I do and what comes out of it, and then I track, is my heart rate going up too high, is it coming back down fast enough, have that functionality of just checking in on making sure that I'm getting enough steps in a day, not sitting at my desk and behind meetings every day, that kind of thing. It tells me to stand up, move around if I'm sitting down too much, and that's first and foremost probably the biggest thing I use. I also track a lot of my health things through there, so female stuff, making sure that I'm getting that done every that it's coming, and that I know that it's that it's regular, and so that's well-being. I also use every now and then, and generally it's when I'm in quite stressful situations, it pops up on my watch saying, "You need to breathe."
Oh, really? So is that measuring your heart rate and your breath, or is that just timed?
No. It's not timed. I thought it was initially, but then I realized it comes at really random times. And then when I think about it, I'm in a really kind of high pressure or high stress type situation.
So it must be measuring your heart rate, and it's measured your heart rate. Yeah, there's an algorithm that's happening in there.
Yeah. So it's really cool though, because it does give you that, because you can just sit there and go or whatever, but actually the Breathe app scaffolds you through like a minute breathing session or a 3-minute breathing session. And so it gives you little tingles on your wrists to know when to breathe in and breathe out, and it works, 100% works. I know you were talking about it before about the taking a breath, but essentially what it's doing is taking you out of that fight or flight mode, taking you out of that and then back into using your cognitive brain and to be able to respond rather than react. So I to be honest, I ignore it sometimes, but when I do use it, it makes me really get back in the right space of mindset, frame of mind, because I'm back in that cognitive mindset.
Yeah. Some of the ways that I use my Garmin at the moment, and I have used the Apple Watch, and I will be using the Apple Watch again. Definitely for steps. Like I'm a big one for trying to go out for walks, so I'll either do a run every second day, and that gets quite a few steps, but just trying to get at least 7,500 if I'm running, not running, but trying to get 10 or 12,500. I was talking to a friend of mine who's really looking to get a little bit more active. Was a really top level football player, but now he's in his 30s and he's sort of, let his fitness go a little bit. So that was my suggestion to him. Just get a really cheap little smartwatch that's going to, you can get them for like $60 from the warehouse or, Kmart or whatever. Just something that's going to track your steps. So it's just something to kind of like gamify the whole approach for you. If you're at school, why not, instead of sitting in the staff room having your coffee, walk around the school, have a chat, get your steps up. It's just something to prompt you to get out, and there's like a little dopamine reward because you're like, wow, awesome. Mine kind of flashes and does these little spiral things when you hit 10,000, which is silly, but it's funny how,
makes you want to do it.
Yeah, it does. I definitely do the move thing. So I turned on the move function, so if I don't move, if it doesn't notice me moving on a GPS location much, then it'll prompt me and it tells me to move. So that's just, if I'm in a meeting, obviously I can't, but I'll just get up and go away. But so even just as a prompt to stand up in meetings when I'm on a call like this, like I'm doing this podcast standing up at the moment because I've got a stand-up table desk, but I can actually sit down as well if I want. So it's a reminder to do that. But you can also set up drink alerts too. So I have had water apps that you can download. Then that's not an Apple specific one; it's an external one. But it'll remind you, it's time to have a drink. So it obviously doesn't know when you have because it's not attached to my stomach. But it's just a reminder to be able to go and get some water and have that drink. So those are some of the things. One of the things that I do like about the body battery, and when I get the Apple Watch on the Garmin, or one of the apps that I like about the Garmin that I don't think is on the Apple Watch at the moment, but it might be coming, or I might look for a third party, is this thing called a body battery reading. So what it does is it measures your sleep, measures your heart rate, what kind of exercise you've had, and probably a couple of metrics as well, maybe body temperature. But what it's doing is it's giving you a reading, just like your phone has a battery reading, it's giving you a body battery. So at the moment, mine's saying I'm down to about 40%. And at the time of recording, it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. When I started today, I was at 55%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
you weren't even recharged?
No, it's like whether I had a terrible sleep, which I had the normal amount of time, but I think the sleep wasn't that great. But also, what it does is it prompts you to start thinking about your week and what you're doing during the day, and it makes you think about taking regular breaks and all those types of things. What I've reflected on is that this week, so Monday and Tuesday of this week, I've had a lot of projects that I've been doing in the team, and I've had to do a lot of galvanizing and a lot of enabling and tenacity stuff. So if you've heard us talk about the working genius, my geniuses are in wonder and invention. I love coming up with new ideas, but asking me to actually implement them and get them on the table and happening, that drains me. And so I'm looking at that going, I know why I'm starting the day so tired, because I've been doing a lot of that hard work.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I just have to do that. I don't have anybody to do that admin work for me as much as I would like. So it's just something to remind you and prompt you.
I think that sleep thing, well, you can definitely do that on your watch. We've just recently sort of gone through a 6-week wellbeing internal sort of reflection, I guess, with a few of us have kind of opted into it. I'm not too sure if you were on it, Mark, weren't you? Yeah. Sporadically, because you're pretty good. But it was really, it was actually quite interesting because one of our team members, she ended up buying a watch throughout, because she realized that her sleep was just really irregular, and so she tracks her sleep on it and things like that now. And and even screen time. That's another good one, another good wellbeing one. Totally. And it made us realise how much screen time, we became accountable to the screen time. That is wellbeing as well, like making sure that you're not sitting there without any purpose scrolling. We've already had a podcast about that. We can link it into it about that whole using your phone without even realising it, which I'm still doing. I really still need to work on that. So keep it. So it's that accountability, and it's actually making you realize how much your sleep. Are you in deep sleep, or are you fluffing around in your sleep, or and it's actually quite eye opening. And one of my friends, he ended up working out through his watch that he had sleep apnea. So he was like dying in his sleep, and he didn't even realize. And so he'd been like this massive, he always struggled with sleep and didn't really do anything about it. And his wife always said that he was a big snorer and all this kind of stuff. And then when he got his app, it realised that he was like literally dying in his sleep and then waking up again. It was crazy. So that's now he's on some machine where he keeps getting woken up in the night. But anyway, the watch is incredible. I love it.
Yeah, so just I think the one other thing that I'll just mention about the watch, particularly in the Apple space, a lot of people don't, like, and this segues to the first Making Wave, a lot of people don't realise what Apple are doing in the AI space, and there are a lot of things happening in behind the scenes. Now, I haven't had any behind the scenes conversations with Apple. This is just what I've read, and because I've explored, I've been like, well, Google and Microsoft are doing all this amazing software stuff. What's Apple doing? One of the takes is that they are working on their microchips or their processors at the moment, the M1, the M2, and then there's going to be the M3. That's what they're working on to be able to drive AI engines offline. So you won't need to have the internet to be able to run that software. You'll be able to do it all on their super powerful chips. So they're kind of working on the hardware to be able to run the Neuro engine, which is an interesting take on things. But what Apple are also indicating, and that's sort of like a predicted trend down the track that's coming, is that they are going to plug AI, the software of AI, that they're developing in with the health metrics on your watch and your phone. So the data that you're getting at the moment is very much up for interpretation. So they'll create graphs and stats for you to be able to interpret. But what the AI will do is they'll pull all of that data, and then you'll have like a health coach on your wrist that will be saying, to do certain things, or you need to up your exercise in this, or I'm noticing a trend how, like Siri will actually become
so cool.
quite like your sort of personal health coach. So that's something to look forward to. So no matter what platform you're on, watches can really help. Now, what I do want to do is just finish up this part of Making Waves by saying I know what some of you are thinking, and some of your friends and colleagues, and my wife feels like this about smartwatches. She wants to get as far away from digital tools as possible, and she feels like the last thing she wants is to have a phone on her wrist. But here's the take that I have on this. My take is that you can actually use your phone, your watch on your wrist as a barrier from your phone. So there are things that you can do if you use your watch in a smart way to give you a connection with the things on your phone that you need, but it can actually help to create a filter at certain times and in certain ways that you don't need to be carrying your phone and have it glued in front of your face all the time. So that's my strategy with. It was partly one of my strategies with going to the Garmin, is because I don't have that connection with the apps as much. But now that I'm going back to the Apple Watch, some of the things that I'm doing, and some of you may want to think about this, I use the Do Not Disturb function a lot. I was just talking to our director, Mike, on the phone this morning, and I rang him, and he said, did that not go through to my phone? It seems to have gone through our answer machine. And I said, maybe you've got Do Not Disturb on and it won't get through. And I said to him, that's what I do. My phone is pretty much in Do Not Disturb just about all the time. It definitely is between the hours of 9 o'clock at night and 7 in the morning. So I don't get any calls or anything, except in the Apple ecosystem, in the settings, you can go in and you can choose your favorites on your contact lists as being people that can bypass that Do Not Disturb. So we can get a call from our daughter who doesn't live with us anymore during the night because it can go past that Do Not Disturb. So you can activate that on your watch as well. So you can actually turn your watch so that you don't get notifications at certain times. So you're not actually tethered to your phone, or you're tied to your phone with all those notifications coming through. That makes sense, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, being really mindful of what notifications are coming through, though, because there's been so many meetings where I've sat, like I'm thinking about where I used to work, and I'd be having a meeting with someone and then they'd just be like this all the time because they'd just get notifications. And I found it like, this is not, is that more important than me? I'm in a meeting with you, that kind of thing. It's
not good socially, no. I remember the first time I got an Apple Watch, I was with a friend of mine who was a principal, and I was going like that because I was getting text messages and all that stuff. And he said, do you realise that whenever you do that, it makes me feel like you're just trying to get out of here and you're looking at the time?
That does. That's what I'm always really wary of, is that if I do look at it, they're like, it's time for you to leave type thing.
So it's not the digital tech's fault. It's how it's user. It's the user that's not using it correctly. So it's user error. But I think there are things that you can do to be able to stop that from happening. But the other thing that I'm doing, in this migration back to Apple, what I'm going to try and do is get the cellular version. There is a small additional fee that you have to pay, but what I'm looking forward to, and I know my wife's looking forward to, is for me to be able to leave my phone at home when we go out for walks or on runs or anything, and I'll just be able to get any emergency contacts or anything through my phone if I need it. So I won't need to take my phone with me everywhere. So that's another way that you can do that. But something else that I think is quite good for people to just realize is that you can turn that do not disturb on and off real fast. So just top right hand corner of your watch, scroll down, hit do not disturb, and then you're good to go. So something to think about. How can my watch in combination with my phone help me be more well rested? How can I keep an eye on my energy levels, and how can I actually use it as a filter between me and the phone, so that I don't need to be so connected all the time? So just something to think about with that. Watch and phone, have a look at it. We've got a link here of all of the different well-being apps that you have in the Apple ecosystem as well. You can jump in there and have a look at that. There's a lot of mindfulness apps. There's the Calm app that I know wins a lot of awards and a lot of people talk about as well. So watch and phone. Here's the last one. Something to finish on, something a little bit lighthearted. Just I know that a lot of the tools that we're using with students in schools are always adapting and always changing and adding more features. And one of our favourite tools to use in schools, particularly for feedback and giving students a chance to have a voice, is, what would you say? What's the number one tool? I'm putting you on the spot, Bex. Here you go.
I don't know.
I've got no idea. Classic. Well, it's the Flip app. So the Flip platform in the Microsoft ecosystem. So whether you're a Google school or a Microsoft school, Flip is a great way for you to be able to share content with your students in a video format, and then your students to be able to share back. You knew that. You just,
I did. I'm sorry. I just didn't know which way you were going with this. This is authentic podcasting, is that I don't read through his notes. We're actually having a conversation.
Yeah, 100%. So if you haven't used Flip before, definitely have a look at it. Reach out to us if you'd like to find out more. We've got expert trainers. Some of our MIE trainers and fellows can help you with that. But anybody in any ecosystem can use it, which is one of the great things. But I just wanted to mention to people that one of the latest updates that Flip have put out is the ability to make comments on your videos that you upload. Now that does need to be activated in the settings, obviously, but now you've also got this really neat threaded comment function. So if you make a comment on one of the students' work, or a student makes a comment on another student's work, you can hit the three dots in the top right hand corner and you can hit reply to thread or reply to comment. And so now you get this nice little discussion happening and going off in different ways. Now a lot of people might be thinking, well, why don't you just talk to them about it? Why would I want to write on a comment if I'm in the same class? Well, for a lot of you in high school, you're not in the same class all day, every day. And for a lot of people who are, doing remote learning, but also to capture those conversations in a written form is a really good way to be able to get that homeschool partnership going. If it's parents commenting, but also, the wider family and whānau and that type of thing as well. So really jump. I would just really encourage people to jump in. We'll put a link in the show notes to that. There's a link there and a nice little video from Flip that they made that shows you how that works on one of their Twitter posts recently.
Cool. Sounds good.
Nice work. All right. Well, that's Making Waves for this week. So 3 different things there. Heaps of resources that you can jump into. We'll put those in the show notes for you. If you want to go into that, any of those links there, share them with people. Share this podcast with people if you know that you're working with someone. If you're a middle leader and you've got a leader at your school who is probably not across the AI, grab that AI dilemma link. Grab the link to this podcast. Share it with them. Spread things around as much as possible with people and raise that awareness. Well, that was a great conversation around lots of different topics today. So like we said, if you're interested in any of the links from some of the things that we talked about, lots of resources, lots of website links to be able to go there and share with lots of other people. Go into our show notes, you'll be able to see everything there and share them away. If you haven't subscribed, definitely do that. We'd love to be able to reach as many people as possible, and that's one way that you can get notifications of when we publish. And Bex, I think you were going to share one little thing to think about before we go.
Yeah, I think this AI stuff in particular, I know is on the hot topic for all of you out there. I was at a board meeting last night and it came up at the board meeting. It's on the tip of everyone's tongues. Now, we've got trainers who are absolutely across everything that's coming out. They're getting updates. They're getting across it straight away. If you feel like you need a supporting hand through this, even if it is around working out how you're going to deploy this kind of stuff in your school, hit us up, bex@utb.bz, and we can come and have a chat about how we can support you in this. You don't have to do this on your own, and we're seeing what's happening across schools in New Zealand, Australia, and across the world. So don't reinvent the wheel. We've got this. Come and ask us for some help.
Fantastic. Well, I think anybody who's got that website, that email address, bex@utb.bz, definitely give you a call, and then we can have a conversation around that. Great to have you on the podcast. See you on the next one.